Chuck, tell me how you doing today.
Hey, Marty. I was just saying, I'm all wound up, buddy. Here we go.
All right. Well, I got a topic that I know you're going to be able to just go in, and I don't even know which direction you're going to go in.
Uh-oh.
Uh, you would probably know the Latin better than I, but there's an old Latin saying that if you wish for peace, prepare for war.
Yes. It's volus pacem. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
The Latin. It's
I know.
all good.
I know it. I know it. Yes.
Well, there's a lot of threat today, a lot of different types of threat, and a lot of things to think about.
Yes.
In that kind of context, what are some of the things our listeners should be thinking about in preparing for war?
Ooh, well, actually, some of my friends have emailed me, some of my civilian friends who don't have a lot of military background, have been emailing me with, the American president making some of these statements that are quite outrageous. And there are a lot of people that are fearful that he would invade Canada. So my first response to your question is, calm down. It's not as bad as it may sound. It does sound horrible. Let's not be foolish. It is an incredibly dangerous time that we're living in. But I do not see parallels that some people are trying to draw with Europe in the 1930s. We're not there, because when Germany started threatening all of its neighbors, they did so with the specific intent that they were going to invade them. That's not the intent of the American administration. This is a bargaining chip. He's lowballing a bid on a piece of property that he wants. Now, why he wants, part of Canada, why he wants Greenland. First of all, he can't find Greenland on the map because he thinks it's Iceland, but whatever. It's a bargaining chip. In the same way, if I can talk to some of your older listeners, that when we had the referendum in Quebec, when was that? The 1998? Something like that.
Early 90s, Meech Lake, and then the referendum.
But I used to say to my friends, calm down. Quebecers who want separation, I mean, really the ones who want separation, just like the ones in Alberta, they're a very small minority. The rest are sending a message. They don't want to separate, but the message they're sending, whether they're Quebecers to Ottawa or Calgarians to Ottawa, the message is, I don't like the way you're treating us. Wake up. Treat us better. So, and the same thing in reverse, if you like. The Americans in this administration, you'll notice I'm not using the guy's name. I don't like to use his name. They are trying to beat on a drum that says, we've been abused. Of course, he doesn't understand history. He doesn't understand economics. He's a political animal. It's all about grievance. How can anyone who has looked at the last 80 years claim that America has been abused? They have become the richest country the world has ever known. How did they do that? They did that by securing all of the world's trade with their navy and by shunting the pound off of the world markets and replacing it with the US dollar. Having the currency that is used in international trade as your currency gives you enormous advantages, not least of which is that your debt is held by other people. You don't hold your own debt. You're using other people's money. And what's the first thing you learn if you go to those seminars on how to get rich in 2 weeks? Use other people's money. Don't use your own money. And in a way, that's what America did after the Second World War. But the beauty of it was, because they were a benign superpower, they could be trusted. They had not only their own interests at heart, they had everybody's interests at heart. That's not the case anymore. So it is a real threat. Will the Americans invade Canada? No, it can't happen for lots of reasons. Maybe we can talk about that. Will they invade Greenland? To what end? They already have troops in Greenland. And the Greenlanders have said, you want to put more troops in Greenland? Great. We'd love it. So back to my first comment. Stay calm. What can we do? Become better informed. That's always step number 2. Be calm and then become better informed. And when you become better informed, you begin to appreciate policy options. And that's what the Prime Minister is doing.
I love your space on be better informed. And I'll tell you, I just want to give you a quick little anecdote around that for me.
Sure.
From theater experience.
Yes.
That, of course, when you're in theater, my case, Afghanistan, CBC is still there, it's still available. So you get to see what people back home think the theater looks like.
Yes.
And one of the things that always shocked me that I think would be really good for this conversation was, from my perspective, we were part of multinational.
Mm-hmm.
And so consistently working with Brits, Aussies, US, the whole plethora. So when we went out, it wasn't any one group going out. It was a bunch from a whole bunch of groups going out.
Right.
But when you came back, if there were casualties, you might have lost 6 people today. CBC reported on the Canadians that died.
Yes.
They didn't report on the group. And I can think of a particular day where I lost 2 Australian friends. And I'm sure it was reported in Australia.
Of course.
But Canada didn't have any idea of what happened in terms of this allied space.
Yeah.
And I came to see forces in terms of allied space. And I think what you're saying around informed, I don't think Canadians were particularly well informed on an allied space back then. But we've seen a change in allied space. From, and I'll say it this way, I won't use names either, but it's an administration that is, in many ways, if I'm looking at North America, it's a big brother in terms of population,
Right.
in terms of resources.
Yes.
But the big brother has started acting a little like Biff from Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And he's given Marty McFly a noogie.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you're my brother. We should do good things together, but I'm still going to noogie you. And I think this is part of that space where there's how we feel about what's going on. But like you said, inform. What's the real threat? What's not the real threat?
Yeah.
And so maybe as you were getting into invasion versus not invasion, what's the real threat? What's not the real threat?
The real threat is disruption. Disruption to civility amongst people, disruption to trade. That's the most obvious. Disruption to their economy, our economy. People are beginning to wake up in the United States and realizing that the disruption to their economy, because there are always 2 economies. There's the macro economy, right? The one that worries only about GDP. And then there's the micro economy. How much money have I got in my paycheck this week to go and buy groceries, to pay my rent, to put a little aside for, medical emergencies because our healthcare has a copay? All of these things, that's the microeconomy. And that always takes a while for it to hit home. The macroeconomy, the U.S. lost 75,000 jobs this month. There's a good example. Every month, and of course, the Bureau of Statistics was canceled by the administration because, the president famously believes that if you don't tell people bad news, then there is no bad news, right? I think he must, I would, were he anyone else, I'd say, well, the guy read, Dr. Goebbels, but he doesn't read. So that's obviously not it. But now they realize, well, businesses need the Department of Labor Statistics. And so they're pumping out numbers again. And, interesting fact, the last year, there was a number. The U.S. economy gained 125,000 jobs this month. And previous administration, the Biden administration, was touting, wow, look at that. Aren't we doing a great job? 125,000 new jobs this month alone. Here's the reality. In a country that has almost 400 million people, just normal living, people dying, people retiring, they need 245,000 jobs to be created every month just to stay at where they're at. So if you only create 125,000 jobs that month, your economy is slowing down. And since January, the American economy hasn't created new jobs. They've lost jobs. So it's doubly slowing down. And it's beginning to show now. It only showed in the macro economy for a while. And so people are still, and there are still, I don't know, there are still 20 million people in the United States that are like, economy's going great. Yeah, they're mostly uneducated. They're mostly in the South. They're mostly retired or self-employed farmers that haven't been affected by the policies. But working class people in cities, they're feeling it. They're feeling it now.
I love how you talk about the impact to individuals. So if I come back to the original question, which is around preparing for peace in Canada, sovereignty has always had an impact on Canada.
Yep.
But in the 30 or so years since I began serving, I didn't hear the word sovereignty very much in political discourse. It wasn't used because it didn't impact your average Canadian.
Correct.
And in fact, in those 30 years, I start right at the time that was known as Forces Reduction or FRP.
Yes. Yes.
I'm joining literally as they're saying, hey, today we're about to half ourselves.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. But that's been the sort of the discourse for the better part of 3 decades.
It has.
Now that the discourse is starting to be, wow, sovereignty is important and we really need to pay attention. What are some of the preparations that our average Canadian can start thinking about? Because everyone's talking about submarines and jet fighters and, sky surveillance systems. What should we be focusing our attention on in terms of preparing for actual threat?
I think I understand your question, Marty. My issue is, how are we going to define actual threat?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And there are different types of sovereignty. Now, I'm older than you are, and I remember that we always, in the Department of National Defense and then the Canadian Armed Forces, our number one mission was always defense of Canadian sovereignty. But that was a shibboleth. It didn't mean anything to anybody. What does that mean? Well, we're going to defend our country come whatever. With what was always my question. We're going to defend our North. Really? I've been to the North. We couldn't hope to defend it then. We can't hope to defend it now. And, like the previous CDS, Wayne Ayres said, I think yesterday, and upset some people in the process, because he was quoted about we should prepare for maybe thinking about nuclear weapons. But he said, he likes the idea of putting troops in the North, and here's a guy who knows what he's talking about, because he was the chief of the defense staff and he was working at the highest levels. You're not going to build bases in the North. He likes the idea of having small outposts, right? Supply depots, reinforcing the Rangers. They do fantastic work, all of those things. But if you've never been to the North, you don't know that you cannot build Canadian Forces Esquimalt, Canadian Forces, Kingston. You cannot build one of those things in the far north, for the very simple reason that people aren't going to be posted there. Because, so we spend $5 billion and we build this giant base with all the things that our bases have. We've got a small base hospital, there's a CanX, there's some PMQs, there's a bunch of quarters, there's hangars for vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. All right, now we're going to populate it with, 15,000 serving members, of which, 10,000 of them are probably married. So we're going to need some schools. So we'll build some schools. Who's going to go up there to teach? Because you're going to say to teachers, at least when we hired teachers to teach in Europe, they were like, yeah, I'll teach in Europe because every weekend I can go skiing, right? Or I can go to Switzerland, or I can go to France, right? We're going to send you to Inuvik to teach grade 5. And what am I going to do every evening? Right? Well, there's a base theater. You can go to the CanX. Oh, really? That's exciting. No, thank you. And all of the wives that have jobs, what are they going to do? So it becomes an almost insurmountable problem outside of war. Because in time of war, you just put 15,000 troops where you need them, and their families sit and wait for them to come home. That's not where we're at. So the threat is manifold. It is, I want to say it's complex as opposed to complicated because it is self-evolving. It's changing so fast that we can't necessarily predict where it's going to go next. But back to your specific question, what should the average Canadian do? Let's move beyond becoming better versed in the threats, what that means. Then using that knowledge so that when people start talking, when politicians who want your vote start saying, and this is where we're going, wait a second, hang on. No, I'm better educated than you think I am. You're lying to me. Stop lying to me, because that's not true. Right? As opposed to, oh, I have no idea. Well, why would he lie to me? Why would she lie to me? And accept what they say at face value. So, I mean, I have to admit, and I think I've mentioned this in a previous podcast, I am a lifelong conservative, member of the party for many, many years, have not voted Liberal since I was 20 years old, so that's half a century. But if there's a snap election tomorrow or even a year from now, I am not going to vote for the Conservative Party because their message is grievance and negativity. And people are saying, oh, the Prime Minister doesn't know what he's doing. Really? We've never had anybody this well educated, this experienced on world trade and policy as our Prime Minister, ever. Guy's got a PhD in economics, and he ran 2 national banks and a multinational fund. If he were any brighter, he'd be scary.
I love what you did right there around economics and politics because I learned something. I'm pretty well versed in this field, but the thing I learned just in this last week was who can actually pay for a new submarine. I always kind of assumed it was Ministry of National Defense and Ministry of, maybe it's the Prime Minister. No, it's procurement.
Right.
And we all know procurement is glacial.
Yes. Yeah.
Except in time of threat.
Yes.
And Canada has a long history of saying, oh, time of threat,
yep,
we can absolutely change our procurement. And even as the new things have been being said at the political level, we're going to 2%, we're going to be able to spend 5%. Procurement still moves at procurement speed. What is it we need to teach the average Canadian about threat and procurement to be ready for, and I'm coming back to prepare for peace?
Okay. I think for starters, the first lesson, and today, as we're recording, there was an announcement by the federal government saying in the next 3 years, Global Affairs Canada is going to lose about 15% of its budget and people. Some of that through attrition, some of that is just going to be cut back. And the first thing that the unions started shouting was, you can't do that. How can you possibly cut back on these people? We need them. They're absolutely crucial. So the first thing Canadians need to understand is just because it's your favorite thing or it has a personal impact on you doesn't mean that it can't be done. It can be done. We have to start thinking in national terms. And this is difficult, I think, for many Canadians, because although we're a very well-educated population, and by and large, we're better traveled than most countries, we still tend to think provincially. So, the federal government's going to do the following. Okay, what does that mean? Well, that means that the town that you live in may not have that factory forever because we're going to send the money that we use to support those jobs to another province. We got to start thinking in terms of national as opposed to local. Easy for me to say, I'm retired. My check shows up every month, whether I get out of bed or not. I get that. I really do. But the alternative is that we fracture. We can't afford to fracture in the face of threat, any threat. There's only safety and solidarity.
I love that notion of safety and solidarity, especially when it comes to Canadians in general, looking at threat. And I love the way you put it, that there are different things that we've become accustomed to. And so I want to talk about Canadians as a lifestyle.
Sure.
Because you mentioned earlier how sovereignty was always the number one rule in the military. Well, Be and Reflect Canada was always one of those rules as well.
Right.
And I think we did a great job making things available for Canadians, but Canadians didn't always understand what we did.
Yes.
And you could see that.
Yeah.
And there's become a separation between what defense is as a community and what defense is internally. And what I'm hearing you suggest is that community needs to become bigger. That some of those people who have jobs today, those jobs may not be those jobs anymore, but there'll probably be some jobs for you in defense.
Yes.
We can't shrink one without growing the other. It's just defense I'm a recruiter. I'm an ex-recruiter. Defense was not always the most popular job.
Correct.
And so there is a bit of a space there around understanding community, that it's not about whether this is popular or not. It's about whether it's necessary or not. And I think we have an entire generation that did not feel its necessity that is suddenly now feeling its necessity.
That's well put. Yeah.
So with a few minutes left, what do you think we can do for the average Canadian to get ready for this new necessity?
Well, I think the Department of National Defense is making inroads. It's trying to explain that we're going to spend a lot more money, but it's not all going on equipment. We need more people. So I understand from listening to Wayne Eyre on a talk yesterday that recruiting is up last month and last year. So that's good, because we need fresh young faces. We need more people. We need more experience. That's one thing. The reserves are going to grow. So if you've always wondered if you're a young man or a woman, and young is relative, because you can join the armed forces right up until your 50th birthday, I think. You could join the reserves. If you don't want to join the reserves because that's perhaps too military and too much of a cost on your personal time. The other thing that we're going to build is we're going to build the supplementary reserve. And the supplementary reserve really just means you say, I am willing to be on the sup reserve, and I understand that I may have to go and do a little bit of training, 2 or 3 days a year, and you'll pay me, you'll feed me, and it'll be local, and it won't necessarily be with weapons. It'll be for something else. And then in conjunction with that, the current Chief of the Defense Staff, General Carignan, has indicated, and this is not a fully formed idea, and she's been criticized, I think, unfairly, and that is that she is hoping to build, under the umbrella of all this department growth, a civil defense force that isn't necessarily armed. It's there to fill sandbags so that soldiers don't have to fill sandbags. It's there to suddenly be the extra person in the back of an ambulance, right? And all you need to do is you need to know how to load the gurney in the back. You're not going to touch the patient, right? Rather than have a trained medic loading of someone, all of these little things that can be done, all because you're saying, I'm willing to volunteer. Yeah, you're going to pay me, but it's going to be a pittance. But, I'm here, I'm ready. When I hear the siren, I will report to the local fire station, and they'll use me in any way they want that allows trained firefighters, trained medics, trained soldiers, trained police not to waste their time on that stuff that I can do. So all of these things are ways that citizens, now we always did this, but only in wartime. So we need to shift our thinking a little bit.
I love that. And just as we close up our podcast for today, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for that space around being calm. Thank you for that space around being informed. What I'm really hearing you say in that third one is, and prepare for your contribution.
Yeah.
We're not going to get there unless all of us contribute. If Canada's going to be Canada strong, we all have to contribute from an informed and calm space.
Amen.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Marty.